And today is the day where we meet again. About 9 months ago I played the Duet Night Abyss technical test and apparently I promised a first impressions video back then. And that one never happened. So yeah, that day is today as well. And this time this video is even sponsored by Duet Night Abyss themselves. However, I am not restricted in what I can say, which also means I will do so, as I think giving constructive criticism is only good for the game, and today I will give you my full critical review here and compare it to the technical test back then. This review will be mostly spoiler free, however some footage or texts could potentially spoil you in certain regards, so take this as your spoiler warning. But I will try to keep it down as much as I can and I will not spoil major story plot points. Let's get started, but first let's talk about what Duet Night Abyss, or DNA for short, actually is. DNA is what happens if... okay, I'm not gonna make that joke. DNA is what happens if Warframe had anime waifus and married a gacha system, while also being PGA 16 or up because...
What do you think you're doing?
Yeah, the story in this game is honestly quite dark, and I love it, because it is a change of pace to many other gacha games I have played so far. Anyway, Duet Night Abyss is a fantasy adventure demon-themed RPG with a dual narrative, which also means you will play both the male and the female MCs, and if you select the girl at the beginning, you will be forced to play the perspective of the male counterpart throughout the story, and vice versa. The game comes with a dual weapon system as well, where you can freely switch between melee weapons such as swords, polearms or katanas, and ranged weapons such as your classic bows, shotguns or even grenade launchers. The game begins with a well-paced tutorial. Not a lot of dialogue, but a lot of gameplay, combat and cutscenes. And that is actually something which continues throughout the entire game, and our MC is fully voiced through all of this. Which is fantastic, cause I really fell in love with the British voice acting in this game, and I think DNA has probably the best voice acting out of all the gachas I have played so far.
So, I've made up my mind. With all my wisdom, I'm gonna guide you down the right path.
Shortly after leaving the movement tutorial cave, we get this Breath of the Wild-esque scene, and it is still as underwhelming to me as it has been in the tech test. Right after that, the first thing I've noticed has been the camera, which has no interpolation whatsoever and felt very off-putting early on, and while I got used to it, that doesn't necessarily mean it's good. At least in the very beginning. To be fair, I think something changes with the camera later on, I'm not too sure. Furthermore, one of my main critique points of the tech test have been the very low environment textures and low polygons used for anything not being characters. And that has been heavily addressed so far. The game does look very coherent right now, but that also comes at a cost, cause most objects now have very aggressive LODs, even on the highest graphical settings possible. Anyway, let's continue with the story. We pick up our different kind of weapons, continue in the story and gradually unlock more and more features, which also means we can now talk about it. We can slide, dash, slide into a dash, which then results into this helix jump, which we then can again follow up with another jump resulting effectively in a double jump. We can also quickly dash climb any walls in the game, and all of that combined results in a very smooth and honestly quite fun movement experience, kinda akin to Wuthering Waves. Well, aside from one very important aspect, there is no fucking sprinting. Please, for God's sake, add in sprinting. Jumping around being the only way of traversal, aside from, well, moving normally, which does not take an eternity, is super uncomfortable, and while I really like the movement of the jumps and climbing the walls, having no sprint is really offsetting as hell, at least to me that is. This might actually be my number 1 complaint. Well, no, number 2 complaint. We get to number 1 later on. Movement aside, we have melee and ranged weapons, a skill and an ultimate, which both consume sanity, which basically is our energy resource in this game, and we also have a little pet system called Genimon, which helps us in combat. We also catch these Genimons in the overworld. Continuing with the tutorial story introduction, we solve some puzzles, enter various new areas, and this time I have no stutters. Locations and areas load in smoothly now, and that is yet another issue which has been addressed since the technical test. Towards the end of the tutorial we fight the first boss, and I remember this boss fight was actually pretty challenging back in the tech test, but this time she kinda just died. So either I suddenly gained 1000 skill, or they overnerfed her, or I misremember. Something in between would be good, honestly. Like, don't make her that hard, but also, you know, just don't have her just die. Postscript writing refer, yes, they nerfed her a lot, as we can now re-challenge all the bosses in a new endgame mode, and holy crap, I do not do damage, while she also features a much enhanced moveset. I actually think for level 40 fights, these bosses take way too less damage. At least that has been my first impression so far. Anyway, then stuff which I won't tell you because of spoilers happened, and we end up in Ice Lake City. Here I noticed they did indeed add IK to the characters, so that is fantastic. Some clipping issues have also been resolved, however there are still quite a few of them, and while I understand that fixing those is not necessarily easy, especially in regards to character clothes physics, I personally do have the expectation for at least the clothes to not clip into their legs while standing idle. And while I'm already nitpicky here anyway, let's backtrack slightly, cause there could be some more splash effects when jumping into the water, as swimming is not possible in this game. You will just get teleported back to where you just came from. During the main quest in the city I noticed the font more and more, and it kinda looks like some version of Arial to me, and honestly very basic and placeholdery. This also applies to the main menu, which I really hope is a placeholder, cause it is literally just black and grey boxes with a little bit of border radius on some edges. Overall, the UI has not impressed me so far, but it is serviceable for what it needs to do. The UX on the other hand needs some improvement. While we get to the gacha banners later on at the end of each pull, you know, the overview screen, I cannot click the items I received. So I see a cool 4-star, but I don't know what it does. Please make it clickable and add a tooltip for it at least. I know you have it in the game already, the same applies for items and characters in the shop as well. I really would like to view the character before buying it. Lastly, the NPCs feel very lifeless as well. The talking animation is literally just changing their mouth between a D form and a straight line, and while it is serviceable, I think this could be improved. But I do also know that I am very nitpicky here a little bit. I also noticed that the light adjustments when entering or leaving the caves have been adjusted and are now much better, so good on that change as well. Speaking of caves, when entering this cave, this is the music you hear. Just listen to it.
Is this place a temple?
Yes. Someone once left that flying ship here. And a key.
Honestly, the music in this game is superb. Absolutely fantastic. Which is also why I just found myself running around in cycles or standing still, just listening to the music. I probably spent about 5 to 10 minutes in this cave only listening to this, before I found it on YouTube. Long story short, after playing the game for about 16 hours, I have just finished the first chapter of the main story out of the 3 available, and it has been filled with death, grievance, fun and lighthearted scenes, all while being really well paced. No sentence felt useless, and if it did, well, even the main antagonist tells their minion to get to the point.
Cut the fancy talk. Get to the point.
Ah, yes, Chief.
Overall, speaking only in terms of story and environmental telling, the game has had a glow up since the first tech test and I have been extremely hooked and impressed by it. Overall, a solid 8, maybe even a 9 out of 10 for me. While some animations could be improved, I honestly might just be spoiled by ZZZ at this point and my expectations might just be too high. Next up, I would love to give you more insight into the weapon and combat system, but honestly that is an entire video on its own. Like literally, it will come right after this one. Sponsored as well, but honestly I enjoy the game so much I probably would have just done it for free, honestly. Regardless, to quickly summarize it here, there are so-called demon wedges for characters, weapons and consonance weapons, and they are basically your equipment, and there is, surprise, no RNG for this. Yes, this game does not have any RNG for their equipment, characters or weapons. Once obtained, that is what you get and you're now in before what you get. Some of the demon wedges also change how the character or weapon actually behaves, so that is very cool, but also too much to cover in this video as it will already be pretty long. Overall, I do have to say, however, I like the weapon and demon wedge system in itself, and I also do want to mention that all weapons, yes, all of them. That also includes all of the 5 stars from the standard banner and the rate up signature weapons. They are all craftable. The game also comes with a well done trainings room, which is honestly really nice because looking at my own skill issues, you might want to practice your characters against certain enemies a bit. Generally speaking, the combat seems much improved over the tech test as well and feels super fluent and satisfying. No complaints here from my side. There are even some cool techs, like for example using your pole arm's charged attack, which will have the weapon whirl forwards and dealing damage indefinitely, until you retrieve it, while you can also still use your guns. Probably actually not that useful in practice because it does like no damage, but it is nice that stuff like this exists. As you might have noticed by now, you can summon up to 2 teammates from your roster to follow you along as AI companions, and they will also assist you in battle. Maybe a little bit too much, at least during the story. This does not work in all game modes and behaves differently in multiplayer. Yes, this game does even have that for all endgame modes, and I think that is pretty cool as well. If you get too confused by your AI companions VFX, by the way, you can also adjust that in the settings. Regardless, you will be controlling your character of choice and there is no swapping between characters. You also won't have your companions on your side for various endgame modes, such as the roguelike Maze of Missteps, in which you just defeat waves of enemies, then select a power-up, encounter various occurrences, fight the big baddie at the end, and yeah, that's about it. Nothing new or innovative here either, but it is a staple by now and honestly it was really fun. The game features much more, such as the Sojourn system, which kinda is like a reputation system with your characters, but you unlock special stories with them. These stories are quite short and have actually good world and character building, so they have not been boring to listen through, as well as they are also voiced. Your daily farming is something I think is kinda cool, but also somewhat have a problem with. For some of the stages, you are basically spending 30 to 50 stamina to enter a 3-minute survive hordes of enemy simulation, and after the 3 minutes are over, you can choose to continue with more difficult enemies, but also you get more rewards for slightly higher stamina cost. And while I really like the system, it also is somewhat time consuming, basically requiring you to take 12 to 15 minutes every day only for this. While I don't personally dislike actually, having to play a game, time is still an important factor to take into consideration when talking about gacha games, so this might not be for everyone and that is why I want to mention it. We also have a pretty in-depth forging system where we can even craft the 5-star weapons we can obtain from the gacha banners. I actually mentioned that before already. So what else can we craft? We can craft dyes to, well, dye our weapons for more customization, and speaking of which, we have a certain amount of freedom in customization for our characters, such as this, or this angry bird, or this blindfold, or this. Wait, what? Oh, well, hi there. Next I want to talk about the impression system. Contrary to most other games, your choices of dialogue actually matter in this game. Obviously, for the main story, it will not really change how the main story plays out, but it does possibly change your side quests. There are 5 impressions in this game: benefit, morality, wisdom, empathy, and chaos. Depending on your dialogue choice, you will gain 3 points in one of the 5 impression stats, and you will make pen and paper alike rolls on these stats for so-called impression checks. And of course I low roll on these. Always. Except if it doesn't matter, then I don't. Once passed, you can unlock additional dialogue, stories, or even side quests. Speaking of which, I also remember a side quest where I was supposed to retrieve some lost items for a girl, and then I sold these items to a random merchant instead to complete the quest, and I honestly thought that was really cool. Lastly, there also is a shop where you can obtain materials, crafting blueprints, cosmetics, and premium currency for passing impression checks. Overall, I love pen and paper, and having this system in the game is honestly really cool. Probably one of my favorite systems out of many gacha games I've played so far. Lastly, let's also talk about the gacha system. The bad thing first. During my 30 hours of playtime, I got a total of 20 premium pulls and 50 standard banner pulls. 40 out of these standard pulls, however, have been by mail, so that is probably more like a better thing. Overall, the income on pulls in this game is very low. For the beginning of a game, and even more so for a beta where you probably, want to test a lot of characters, this seems unusually low, and honestly it feels quite bad as I cannot really test a lot of characters. And mind you, I actually got 2 5 stars on my beginner banner, which is a first for me. So I was quite happy about that, until I remember that this account will be deleted and I will not actually have that anymore later on, so okay, anyway. For the good news though. This game does not have a 50-50. You are guaranteed the rate up character and the weapon upon hitting max pity. This might be the trade-off they are going for, where all your overall income on pulls is very low in exchange for guaranteed characters and weapons, and again, all of the 5-star gacha weapons are craftable as well. So it's honestly only the characters you really need, and again, that might be the trade-off they really just go for. Mind you, we first have to obtain also the relative blueprints from the boss fights or by other means, but once obtained, well, we can craft the weapons. This video is already pretty long, so let's get to a conclusion here. Personally, I really like Duet Night Abyss a lot. For the positives, the story is actually really good and well told, the combat is super fun, the game's equipment system is without RNG and pretty diverse, most issues I have had during the tech test have been addressed, the music is absolutely fantastic, and the gacha system has a rate up guarantee. And we can also craft all weapons. The impression system is interesting and very unique to the gacha genre, at least as far as I know, and boss fights also have been interesting and challenging as well. Which brings us to the negatives. The bosses, at least especially early into the game, might be a little bit too hard. Maybe it is intended this way due to the rewards they provide, but that has been my impression regardless. Dailies might take a little bit too long, but do also have a very interesting approach, so I will take that as a neutral, as I don't think actually having to play the game is necessarily a negative. Unfortunately, there is still no sprinting in the game. Please, Hero Game, please add a sprinting system. This would make the game so much better. At least, again, in my opinion. Lastly, the pull income seems a bit low, even for a system as generous as this one, where you can craft most stuff and have a rate up guarantee. Lastly, some animations could be improved, especially during emotional scenes, as it might not convey the full immersion to some. At least that has been my impression. Overall, I give Duet Night Abyss a total of 8.5 out of 10 for my first impressions. This is obviously subject to change, especially if I continue playing the game more and more. And also, this is the first beta, so that is honestly really good. Who knows, maybe some things turn out better than I thought, or, well, become worse. We will see. Thank you Hero Game for sponsoring this video, and to you guys, I hope this has been insightful. Subscribe for more, and again, a combat and weapon video will be coming soon. Take care and have a great day. Peace!